In the heart of London, there is a place where the past still breathes, Trafalgar Square, where light glides across the stone, where every passing step unknowingly touches the layers of time that have not yet fallen asleep. Because deep beneath that ground, something is still waiting to be found. No one knows precisely where it began, only that every time a spade touches the soil, it awakens distant dreams, dreams of rivers, of wind, and of an age that had no name. Beneath the polished stones of today lies another world, silent, damp, older than memory itself. If we could see through that earth, perhaps we would see London before it had a name. A wild land where time still whispers in the sleep of stone. When the excavators began to dig for a new project in Trafalgar Square, they did not just move soil and stone. They awakened a layer of memory that had been long asleep beneath the earth. In the damp, cold layers of time, enormous bones began to appear. Fossils of lions, hippos, and rhinoceroses. Creatures that had once roamed here hundreds of thousands of years ago. Beneath the bright square of modern London, there once lay a vast wetland wilderness, a place where reeds swayed in the wind, where soft mud kept the footprints of giants. There were no streets, no bells, no smoke, only mist, quiet waters, and the breath of wind moving across the open land. That was London before it had a name. When time itself was still a misty river, not yet flowing into form. Then the climate changed. The ice ages came and went, leaving their traces deep in the ground like ancient breaths. The River Thames, still wild, wound through the meadows and forests, carrying the salt of the faraway sea. And on the higher banks, something different appeared. Not animal bones this time, but footprints. Human footprints. Just a few faint impressions in the mud, but enough to say that people had come and stayed. They arrived more than 800,000 years ago, possibly from southern Europe, carrying rudimentary stone tools. They followed herds across the grasslands, hunting, gathering, and lighting fires by the river. Fire was their treasure, the only thing that stood between them and the darkness. When night came, they sat around the flames, listening to the water touching the shore, and to the cries of wild animals echoing from afar. No one knows what they called this place, but from that moment, human footprints were pressed into the land that would one day become the heart of an empire. Across thousands of years, they learned to understand the wind, the sun, and the earth beneath them. They learned that seeds could grow into food, that animals could be tamed, and that rivers could sustain life. The hunters became settlers. Wood and clay huts rose along the banks of the Thames, where firelight shimmered on the water and smoke curled into the morning sky. The sound of footsteps mixed with the sound of the river and the wind, forming the first rhythm of a small community. Around 4,000 years before Christ, in the age of stone and clay, the people by the river had learned to farm. They planted wheat and barley, they raised cattle, sheep, and goats. Each harvest season, the fields shimmered under the sun, and the air filled with laughter, music, and the crackle of fire at night. Life was simple, but in the wind that passed over the grass, something was changing. A quiet beginning was taking shape. Then came the Bronze Age, then the Iron Age. People learned to shape metal, to build strong houses, and to trade what they made. Paths began to link one village to another. The marks of the first wooden wheels appeared in the dirt. Along the Thames, blue smoke rose from thatched roofs and drifted across the Silver River. Everything was fragile, but a seed had already been planted, the seed of a city. From the river, from the earth, from fire, from the hands of people who did not yet know what they were creating, London began to grow. Today, it is hard to imagine that where hippos and rhinoceroses once walked, now stands the center of a vast capital. Yet, if you listen closely, you can still feel that ancient rhythm breathing beneath your feet. Beneath every brick, every step, the past remains, quiet, enduring, like a hidden current of time. The first footprints have faded, but the wind still carries their breath along the Thames, like a greeting from those who laid the first stones of a city that did not yet know its name. And so, from the land of beasts and rivers, the story of London began, softly, quietly, like the first morning of humankind. In the year 43 after Christ, when the Roman sails moved along the southern coast of Britain, the fog still covered the water like a white veil. From a distance, legions advanced quietly, carrying the golden eagle of the empire into a land that had never been named. To the native people, it was only wilderness, a place of reeds, of wind, and salt from the sea. But to the Romans, it was something more. They saw a river that could carry goods, tides that could lift ships out of the ocean, and a land from which the empire could reach farther north. On the low banks of that river, they began to build a settlement. Wooden posts were driven deep into the mud. Stones were laid into the first roads, and from that beginning, Londinium was born. At first, it was only a trading post, small, rough, almost temporary, but its position made it a stop for every route of commerce. Timber from the north, tin and iron from Cornwall, goods from Gaul and Hispania, all passed through here. Wooden docks rose along the river where ships arrived carrying wine, olive oil, and pottery from Rome. In return, they took away furs, honey, and barley from the local tribes. Along the water, stone and brick houses soon replaced wooden huts. The streets were drawn straight, connecting the market to the central square. The sound of hammers striking iron, the grind of wheels on stone, the voices of merchants calling out their prices, all of it filled the cold, damp air. And from this small settlement, Londinium became the busiest trading hub in Britannia, a place where Roman officials and native people stood side by side beneath the same roof. The city then was no larger than Hyde Park is today, yet its life reached far beyond its walls. Wooden bridges crossed the river. Smoke rose between red-tiled roofs. At the gates, soldiers patrolled the walls. In the square, traders spoke of news carried across the empire, from Rome, from Gaul, from provinces they had never seen. From Londinium, straight Roman roads spread like veins through the land. They carried goods, soldiers, and messages across the south. The river became the lifeline of the city, a natural border, a path to the sea. By day, Londinium moved like a great machine, powered by hammers, carts, and human hands. By night, when fog rolled across the water, the torchlight shimmered on the stone, and the city seemed to see its own reflection flowing in the river of the empire. The Romans built more than stone walls. They built a way of life, a sense of order, of discipline, of endless ambition. Under their hands, the wild land awakened. From its roads, its ports, its markets, a new rhythm began to rise, the rhythm of Rome. Even though it covered only the size of a park, Londinium had become the beating heart of the north of the empire, a place where different worlds met, where the sound of waves mixed with the crackle of firelight. And as the river flowed onward, it carried something more than trade. It carried the first voice of a city learning to know itself, a city that, from that moment on, would never fall asleep again. In the 2nd century after Christ, Londinium entered a new age. What the Romans had built now took the form of a valid city. Beside the quiet river, stone walls rose high, enclosing an area about the size of Hyde Park today. Gates opened to the north, the south, the east, and the west, welcoming merchants, soldiers, and townsfolk each day. Watchtowers stood along the walls, banners fluttering in the cold northern wind. From above, Londinium looked like a Roman jewel glowing in the fog of Britannia. Inside the walls, straight stone roads crossed at the center, where the Forum and Basilica stood. It was the largest administrative building north of the Alps. Here, officials rendered judgments, merchants struck agreements, and citizens gathered for festivals. White columns and arched ceilings caught the rare sunlight lighting up the square. Nearby, the marketplace opened each morning. Goods arrived from across the empire: cloth from Egypt, wine from France, olive oil from Spain, along with local crafts and food. The sound of merchants calling, wheels grinding on stone, and bells marking the hours filled the air. It was the heartbeat of a Roman city. Along the river, the port of Londinium became the busiest in Britannia. Wooden docks reached far into the water where ships arrived, bringing goods and news from the continent. It was said that if you stood by the river, you could hear every language: Latin, Gaulish, Greek, and the native tongue of the Celts. The port was more than a place of trade. It was a place where cultures met. In small houses, people built altars to Jupiter, to Minerva, to Mercury, the gods of wisdom, of commerce, and of luck. Even at the farthest edge of the empire, Londinium still breathed with the spirit of Rome. The city had nearly 60,000 people, an astonishing number for the ancient world. There were soldiers, artisans, merchants, enslaved people, and travelers from every corner of the empire. In the markets, a North African sold perfume, a Gaulish potter worked his clay, a Celtic woman wove fabric, while Roman officers walked the streets. Londinium became a living portrait of the empire itself, a city where all its peoples gathered beneath one flag. When night came, thousands of torches lit up the city. From outside the walls, travelers saw their reflections shimmering on the river, like stars fallen into the water. In roadside inns, merchants told stories of stormy seas and long roads leading back to Rome. Londinium was not only a center of trade, it was also a center of trade. It was a beginning, a dream of a city that could speak to the world and stand firm at the edge of empire. But even the strongest cities must bow to time. In the late 2nd century, a great fire broke out in Londinium. No one knew where it began. Perhaps a kitchen, perhaps the market by the river. Within days, flames swept through the streets, devouring houses, warehouses, and even much of the central square. When the ashes settled, most of the city lay in ruins. They said the fire painted the night sky of Britannia a deep, vibrant red. Then the plague came. Merchants and soldiers returning from the south brought with them something invisible, a sickness that fire could not burn away. It spread quickly, taking thousands of lives. The port fell silent. The markets emptied. The streets echoed only with the steps of guards. From its bright peak, Londinium sank into silence. And yet, even in that silence, life found a way. Some districts were rebuilt. The survivors cleared the ashes, raised new roofs, and reopened small markets. It was not the same as before, but it was alive. Dust covered the streets, but beneath it, the pulse of the city still moved. The river still carried silt, still fed its memory. Across the centuries, broken bricks, Roman coins, and faint foundations would tell their story. A city that once burned bright, fell into ashes, but never truly died. Londinium may have weakened, but its seed had already been planted. A city born of river, of stone, and of human hands would never completely fade away. Even now, when we watch the water flow quietly through the heart of London, we can still feel the breath of those old centuries. We can still hear, in the wind, the sound of hammers striking stone and waves touching forgotten docks. In the memory of the earth, a city learned how to live again. And that was the true beginning of London, before history turned the page, when the Romans began to leave, and a new age slowly began to rise. As the Roman Empire began to fade, the roads that once echoed with wheels and voices grew quiet beneath the grass. In the year 410 after Christ, the Roman legions left Britain. They departed in silence, leaving behind cracked walls, empty squares, and a city with no one to lead it. Londinium drifted like a ship without a captain after a storm. Houses collapsed with time. Walls crumbled. Vines crept over streets that had once been lit by fire and trade. Where merchants once bargained, only the wind now moved through open windows. The river still flowed, but the docks decayed. The bridges fell, and mud covered the places where ships once rested. No one told stories anymore. No one kept the fire alive. Londinium grew silent, like a dream fading into darkness. For 2 centuries, the shadow of the empire lingered, faint as a mark upon the earth. People found rusted coins, fallen columns, and fragments of tile among the ruins. Perhaps a few families stayed behind, living between broken walls, lighting fires in old temples, hearing birds nest in cold stone arches. But in truth, Londinium had returned to the wild. In winter, fog covered the broken domes. In summer, weeds rose between the stones. The city slept a long sleep. Then new footsteps came. From the northeast, across the North Sea, came the Anglo-Saxons. They came from what is now Germany and Denmark, bringing families, tools, and fire. They did not settle inside the ruins. They chose open ground to the west of the Roman wall, where the river curved gently like an open arm. There, they built wooden homes, opened markets, and called it Lundenwic, the trading town of London. Lundenwic was small, but it lived. There were no stone walls, no basilicas, only the sound of markets, boats docking, and smoke rising into the dusk. The Anglo-Saxons fished, made pottery, and traded along the river. They had no empire, only a community, small, steady, bound by trust and land. And from that simplicity, a new rhythm of life began. From the ashes of Rome, human breath returned, slow but deep. If Londinium had been grand and built of stone, Lundenwic was humble and warm, built of wood. The roads were soft paths through the grass. The houses had timber frames and thatched roofs. The market was only a few tables by the water. In the morning mist, one could hear the ring of hammers on iron, the splash of oars, the laughter of children beside the river. Boats carried grain, furs, honey, and wine from the south of England. On the shore, traders lit fires and told stories of the Roman world they had never seen. Lundenwic became a place of trade, not rich, but full of life. By the 7th and 8th centuries, it began to grow. Wooden churches rose above the fields, their bells calling people to prayer. A new faith spread, Christianity, bringing gentleness and patience. London was no longer a symbol of empire, but a home for those who lived close to the river, close to the land, and close to each other. At dawn, if you stood by the water, you could hear the wind move through the reeds and boats gliding in the current. Lundenwic did not try to rebuild what was lost. It simply lived calm and enduring like the river itself. But history never stays still. In the 9th century, new sails appeared on the northern horizon. Not all carry trades. Some carried fire. The Vikings came, warriors and merchants from Scandinavia. They landed along the Thames, raiding and burning towns by the water. Lundenwic, unprotected beyond the Roman wall, could not withstand them. Houses burned, docks fell, people fled. They moved east, back toward the Roman ruins, where the old wall still stood among the weeds. There, they rebuilt their homes, reused the ancient stones and called the place Lundenwic, the walled city. In the cracks of the past, a new life began. They lived among the old stones but carried a new spirit. And from that moment, the city of London was born. Lundenwic became the meeting point of two worlds, the order of Rome and the freedom of the Anglo-Saxons, the strength of stone and the warmth of wood. The Roman roads reopened. Churches rose where temples had once stood. Markets returned among the ruins. People said that when they ploughed their fields or dug new wells, old stones would rise again, as if the past itself was speaking through the earth. From then on, London carried two souls, one Roman, strong, structured, enduring, one Anglo-Saxon, humble, alive, and ever-changing. Through the centuries, life returned to the small city inside the walls. Merchant ships came back to the river. Trade began again. Church bells rang through narrow streets. The smell of bread and wood smoke drifted through the air. In the markets, people traded wool, salt, and metal. Children played near the walls. The old told stories of Rome as if remembering a dream. Londinium was gone, but London had begun. A city reborn, not through power, but through patience. From ruins they raised roofs. From broken stone they built walls. And when the sun shone through the cracks, its light whispered softly, "Nothing is ever truly lost. It is only waiting to be named again." London was born again, not grand, not hurried, but full of life. It learned to rise from the ruins, like a tree growing through the earth, like water finding its path after the flood. And if you listen closely, in the wind that moves through the narrow streets, you can still hear the voices of Rome and the Anglo-Saxons. Two worlds that once met, now breathe together, the first soul of the city. London was reborn not from power, but from memory. From the hands of those who came upon the stones of those who had gone. And perhaps that is why it endures. A city not built on conquest, but on continuity. A city that once slept in silence is now waking with the dawn of a new world. The 11th century began with the sound of church bells and the rhythm of hammers striking stone. After centuries of silence, London rose again. But this time, it was no longer a small town by the river. It had become the heart of a kingdom. Here, stones were not only used to build walls and houses, but also to create other structures. They were carved with the will of kings who wished to leave something eternal behind. King Edward the Confessor, the last of the Anglo-Saxon kings, began this new chapter. He ordered the construction of Westminster Abbey, a great monastery by the Thames, a sacred place that would forever be bound to the English crown. The work began around 1945 on the site of an older church. It took nearly 20 years to complete. When the abbey was finally consecrated in 1065, Edward did not live to see its full glory, but it became his resting place, and the place where every English monarch would be crowned. Westminster Abbey was not just a church. It was the soul of royal power, where earth, stone, and faith became one. A few years later, England changed forever. In 1066, William the Conqueror, Duke of Normandy, defeated Harold at Hastings and claimed the throne. When he entered London, he knew that to rule, he needed a symbol no one could forget. On a bend of the river, he ordered the construction of a fortress of white stone, the White Tower, the heart of what would become the Tower of London. It was a fortress, a palace, and a prison. But above all, it was a message carved in stone that royal power had taken root on English soil. The White Tower rose high with 4 round turrets at each corner, walls more than 3 meters thick, and pale stone that caught the light of the river. At night, it stood like a lantern over the sleeping city. By day, it stood proud and still, a reminder that England now belonged to a new dynasty. From that moment, the Tower of London became a place of imprisonment, a vault for the crown jewels, and the birthplace of endless legends. And as power found its home, people began to gather once more. Between the 11th and 12th centuries, London grew faster than ever. The old Roman walls could no longer contain it. The population swelled. Merchants came from afar. Markets grew around churches, bridges, and gates. But prosperity came with a shadow. The streets were narrow. The wooden houses stood too close. There were no drains, and the air was heavy with smoke. By day, people stepped carefully to avoid the dirty water running through the streets. By night, they carried torches to see through the waste. The Thames, the lifeline of the city, carried both life and filth. It was the source of water, but also the place where all waste was thrown away. The river still welcomed merchant ships from across Europe, but its waters turned darker, slower, and fouler. Ancient records said that the docks were buried in garbage so thick that one could walk across it. And still, the city grew, as if chaos itself were the rhythm that kept London alive. In that world of smoke and noise, a new wonder appeared. The stone London Bridge, completed in 1176. Before that, wooden bridges had burned or collapsed many times. Yet the city could not live without them. When the new bridge was built, it became one of Europe's marvels. Nearly 300 meters long, with 19 arches and fortified gates at each end. Houses, shops, and even a chapel stood upon it. So many people crossed that the bridge felt like a living street above the river. From then on, London was truly united. One bank filled with markets and homes, the other with palaces and churches. The bridge was more than a crossing. It was a symbol of endurance. It survived fires, floods, and centuries of change, always standing firm. That medieval city, poor in comfort yet rich in life, pulsed with sound and color. In narrow alleys, children played. Blacksmiths struck iron. Minstrels sang their stories. Church towers rose across the skyline. St. Paul's, St. Mary Le Bow, All Hallows. As evening came, mist drifted from the river and covered the rooftops, making the city float in a silver haze. Bells rang through the fog, calling people to prayer, then melted into the sound of the waves. This was London in the 12th century, a city of faith and trade, of grandeur and fragility, a place where power was carved in stone and daily life was soaked in smoke, in water, and in humanity. Westminster stood in solemn grace. The White Tower watched over the river. London Bridge joined the two banks of life. Between stone and water, between the bells and the noise, the city learned to balance faith with power, people with time. Looking back, every stone of medieval London seems to breathe with the spirits of two worlds, one reaching for heaven, the other grounded in the dust of the earth. They coexisted side by side as the twin souls of the city, and from that union, London entered a new era, an age where light and shadow would meet again, shaping the chapters that followed, brilliant and sometimes sorrowful, in the long story of its life. The 15th century ended in turmoil, yet with the rise of the Tudor dynasty, London began to shine brighter than ever before. What was once a city of faith and power became the beating heart of England's economy and culture. Along the banks of the Thames, laughter and voices filled the air. Ships from distant shores crowded the river. Timber from the north, wine from France, silk from Italy, and spices from the Far East arrived together, carrying the scent of the world into London's breeze. Flags of many nations fluttered in the wind. The sound of church bells mingled with the hammers of shipbuilders, creating a rhythm that seemed to echo the pulse of a new age. The streets of the city of London were alive with people. Merchants, nobles, and commoners pressed through markets overflowing with colour and noise. Money flowed like water, and with it came a new freedom of thought. London no longer traded only in goods. It traded in ideas, stories, music, and art. Taverns and coffee houses became meeting places where people discussed politics, poetry, kings, and dreams. And in that restless air, something began to shift. People no longer searched only the heavens for meaning. They began to look around them, at life itself, in search of inspiration. Then came the reign of Elizabeth I, the golden age of the Tudors, when London became a living stage. From the old city across the river, people crossed by ferry toward the southern bank. There in Bankside, open fields turned into places of laughter, music, and applause. The first English playhouses were built there, round and open to the sky, so light and air could move freely across the stage. The theatre, the curtain, the rose, and above all, the Globe Theatre, a new symbol of the city where art lived among the people. In 1599, the Globe rose beside the Thames, built from the timbers of an older playhouse. And within that wooden circle, amid smoke and noise, a young writer named William Shakespeare began to tell stories that would change the world. In the whisper of the river wind, audiences heard words that were both simple and profound, earthly and poetic. Romeo and Juliet, Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear. Each play revealed not only the soul of its characters, but the soul of England itself. Shakespeare did what no king could. He made an entire city breathe in rhythm with his words. The Globe was not only a theatre, It was a mirror of London, a place where nobles sat beside commoners, where laughter and sorrow forgot all rank. Each afternoon, as the mist lifted from the Thames, crowds moved across London Bridge, past taverns and vendors, hurrying to claim a place before the show began. Under the slanting sun, the cheers of the crowd filled the air, and the round stage beat like the city's own heart. The stories on that stage reflected the life outside its walls, passionate, tragic, but always full of hope. And so, from Westminster, the symbol of faith, to the Tower, the symbol of power, London gained a third symbol, the globe, the symbol of imagination. A city not built only on stone and steel, but on words and dreams. In the Tudor age, London learned to laugh, to cry, to tell stories, and to listen to itself. On those late afternoons of the 16th century, as the sun sank behind St. Paul's and the river turned to gold, the audience spilled from the theatre, their voices carried by the wind. Footsteps echoed across the wooden bridge, and somewhere between the sound of waves and bells, the city seemed to hum a new melody, the melody of art, of life, of a golden age fading softly into twilight. And as that sound dissolved into the mist, one truth lingered in the air. London was entering a time when dreams and reality walked hand in hand. The 17th century did not begin with music. It began with a sigh. After the golden age of the Tudors, London entered a different time, heavier, harsher, full of trials. The city had grown too crowded, too narrow, too fragile. Wooden streets pressed tightly together. Houses leaned upon each other. The river had lost its purity. People still laughed. They still traded. They still went to the theatre. But in the air hung a quiet fear, as if something unseen was slowly drawing near. And then, in 1656 it came. The plague. A ghost from the Middle Ages returned. Doors shut tight. Red crosses were painted on the homes of the infected, a desperate sign of isolation. In 1 year, more than 100,000 lives were lost, nearly a quarter of the city. The streets fell silent. Funeral carts moved slowly through the fog. Church bells rang each morning, not for prayer, but for farewell. They said that on still nights, the wind carried the scent of medicine, the smoke of burning, and the quiet steps of men burying the dead. The city seemed broken. But as the plague began to fade, another fire rose. In September 1666, on a cool autumn night, a spark caught inside a bakery on Pudding Lane. Within hours, the wind spread the flames across the wooden city. For 4 endless days, London burned. Houses, churches, bridges, all collapsed in a storm of fire. The heat grew so fierce that it melted the lead from the roof of St. Paul's. When the smoke cleared, 3/4 of the city was gone. The survivors walked through ash and ruin. They no longer recognized the streets they had known. Places once filled with laughter were now silent and black. And yet, amid the ruins, something stirred. The silence did not last. Even before the ashes cooled, people began to rebuild. They raise wooden huts. They open small markets. They talked of a new London. No one spoke of leaving, because even burned to the ground, this city was still their home. Among those walking through the ruins was a man named Sir Christopher Wren, architect, scientist, dreamer. He stood before the charred remains of St. Paul's Cathedral and did not see an ending. In his mind, through the haze of smoke, a white dome began to rise. Tall, bright, still, a new prayer for the city. Wren led the rebuilding of London. He designed wider streets, stone houses, and safer systems beneath the ground. Not all his plans came to life, but one dream endured. The new St. Paul's Cathedral, a masterpiece of Baroque design, its great white dome rising above the city like a sign of rebirth. When it was finished, sunlight shimmered across the Thames, reflected from the dome like a star above a living city. Inside, if you looked upward, you could feel more than beauty. You could feel endurance, the quiet strength of a people who refused to fall. St. Paul's was not just a church, it was a promise that even in ruin, humanity could build something greater than before. From that moment, a new age began. The Baroque century was filled with light and order. Stone replaced wood. Wide streets opened to the wind. London learned to protect itself, not with walls, but with wisdom. And when the bells of St. Paul's rang through the clear sky, people knew they had survived one of the hardest chapters of their history. Looking back, this was not only a story of architecture or time. It was a story of the human spirit. Century after century, London learned how to rise. Not through conquest, but through endurance. Each time it fell, it chose to rebuild. Each time darkness came, it found the light again. Perhaps that is the true secret of this city. Not its towers, not its throne, but the quiet, unshakable strength of perseverance. When evening falls and the sun touches the dome of St. Paul's, the golden light melts into the mist like a whisper. London, after everything, still stands, silent, steady, alive. And beneath that white dome, if you listen closely, you can still hear it. The heartbeat of London. As the 18th century began, London grew like a living being. It breathed deeply, then expanded again with every heartbeat of the British Empire spreading across the world. The Thames, once filled with small trading boats, now overflowed with ships from every horizon. Goods, gold, and stories arrived from India, from Africa, from the Caribbean, from Europe, and from the Americas. The port became the meeting point of the world. Each morning, pale mist drifted over the water, reflecting white sails gliding past like the wings of an empire. People came from everywhere, not only merchants and nobles, but immigrants too. French craftsmen escaping religious wars, Portuguese sailors, Jewish families from the Netherlands, and Africans were carried across the seas by slave ships. In Whitechapel, in Soho, in Southwark, thousands of voices mingled together. English, French, Dutch, African, a chorus of the new world, rising and falling with the wind. The population passed 700,000, more than any city in Europe. London was no longer just a city. It was a living tide of humanity. 3-story stone houses lined the new avenues. Carriages rattled across the cobblestones. Oil lamps flickered each evening, painting the streets in gold. In the West End, theatres and music halls came alive. Nobles watched operas, Baroque concerts, and bright new comedies. But in the East, near Docklands and Limehouse and Shadwell, narrow alleys held the poor. Families crowded into dark rooms without windows. The air smelled of coal and damp river water. 2 worlds existed side by side, divided not by distance, but by fate. The 18th century was an age of progress, but also of paradox. London's wealth rested on the shoulders of those who were never seen. Dockworkers lifting crates, weavers bent over looms in dim attics, children selling matches on corners. Enslaved men and women were treated as cargo. Together, they built what the empire called its gold. In the city's heart, nobles and merchants built Georgian houses. They rode double-decked carriages and debated Enlightenment ideas under chandeliers and candlelight. The city glowed with grandeur and contradiction, a vast body made of both light and shadow. Then came 1780, the Gordon Riots. London trembled. At first, it was a protest against a law giving more freedom to Catholics. But the crowd turned violent. Streets filled with fire and fury. Prisons were smashed. Gates were burned. Government buildings were attacked. The army used cannons to end the chaos. When the smoke cleared, more than 300 people were dead. And London understood that wealth could not hide the cracks within its soul. After the riots, the city became careful again. New government halls were built. Order was restored. Bridges rose across the river, linking the banks like fragile symbols of balance between strength and unrest. Still, more people arrived every day, from every colony of the empire. They brought faith. They brought fear. They brought dreams of a better life. And London, like a weary giant, kept breathing, sometimes with the heat of ambition, sometimes with the cold of loss. This was the century when London became the heart of an empire without borders. And also, the mirror reflects the contradictions of humankind. Beneath the glow of oil lamps, between the sound of hooves and the whisper of waves, the city lived on, growing, learning, balancing power and humanity. For no matter how much London changed, it held one truth close: the quiet endurance that kept it moving forward. And when night came, from the bridges, the light of 1,000 lamps shimmered across the river. It looked like the slow, deep breath of history itself, steady, endless, alive. The 19th century. London stepped into a new age, an age of steam, steel, and smoke. If the previous century was the prelude to empire, this was the century when the city became the beating heart of the world. From the Thames, one could see a forest of chimneys stretching upward, breathing coal dust into a silver sky. the sound of machines, the cry of steam engines, and the footsteps of workers blended into the rhythm of the industrial age. London was no longer just a city of merchants or nobles. It was now a city of millions, workers, engineers, inventors, and dreamers, all living within the heavy breath of a world remaking itself. Industrialization turned London into a giant machine that never slept. Steel foundries, textile mills, and shipyards lined the river, working day and night. Smoke from thousands of chimneys dimmed the sun, wrapping the city in a permanent fog, part mist, part coal. But within that haze, something extraordinary was awakening. The sound of gears and pistons became the pulse of the modern world. People began to speak of progress, of the future, of things that once belonged only to dreams. The city's population surged past 2 million, then 3 million, and then 4 million. By the end of the century, it reached 6 million, the largest city on Earth, and the heart of an empire stretching from Canada to India, from Australia to Africa. People said, the sun never sets on the British Empire, and at the center of that saying, London was the sun that never dimmed. At the docks, ships arrived from every corner of the world. In the streets, voices from 100 nations mingled together. Every alley, every crossing carried the rush of a new rhythm, faster, louder, unstoppable. In 1863, a miracle appeared beneath the ground, the world's first underground railway. They called it the Metropolitan Railway. It was more than an invention. It was a declaration. London had entered an age where people could move beneath the earth faster than above it. Wooden carriages, powered by steam, rolled through tunnels lit by gas lamps, carrying thousands of passengers each day. For the first time, people could travel across the city without ever seeing the sky. Above ground, new monuments rose, grand and daring, as if reaching for the clouds. The Palace of Westminster, rebuilt after the Great Fire of 1834, stood in the glory of the Gothic revival. Thousands of sandstone blocks, hundreds of windows, countless carvings, all placed with perfect precision. And within those towers, a new one rose, the Great Clock Tower, later known as Big Ben. Since 1859, its chimes had echoed through the fog, counting the hours of Britain's might. Each strike was a reminder that this city did not just measure time, it made it. Farther east, another marvel spanned the Thames, Tower Bridge. Construction began in 1886 and finished in 1894. It was a masterpiece of engineering and art. Two great towers of stone stood high above the river, housing a system of gears that could lift the bridge for passing ships. Each time the bridge opened, crowds stopped to watch, as if witnessing a ceremony of steel and water. Tower Bridge connects more than 2 riverbanks. It joined the old world of the Tower of London, with the new age of steam rising beside it. At the same time, in the heart of the city, a new square came to life, Trafalgar Square. Completed in the 1840s, it was named to honor Admiral Nelson's victory at Trafalgar. Nelson's column rose 52 meters high, guarded by 4 bronze lions. Around it, white stone buildings gleamed in the light, steps spread wide, and pigeons skimmed across fountains. Trafalgar Square became more than the centre of London. It became the centre of English pride, where memory and identity met. From above, the city appeared to be a web of living veins. Roads, bridges, and railways intertwined like arteries of a vast body. The stations were its beating hearts: Paddington, King's Cross, St. Pancras, sending millions of people on journeys each day. Every brick and iron arch seemed to whisper the same truth. This was the age of man, of reason, of invention. Yet in the light, shadows still moved. Coal smoke, poverty, disease, and loneliness crept through the city's narrow alleys. Industry brought progress, but it also took something away: quiet, closeness, and sometimes humanity itself. By day, London roared with life. By night, it glowed under thousands of gas lamps, their reflections dancing on the river like falling stars. Among the lights, dark figures strolled across the bridges, coats drawn tight, hats pulled low. Sometimes they paused, looking out toward the distance where Big Ben's chime drifted through the mist. And in that moment, the city's heart could almost be heard, deep, steady, unending. By the close of the 19th century, London stood at its height, not just as the capital of a nation, but as the symbol of a civilization. From its cobbled streets to its bronze domes, from its bridges to its stations, every detail declared the same message: humanity can build eternity. But if you listen closely, within the echo of Big Ben and the breath of the Thames, another rhythm could be heard: the pulse of change. Because even within its glory, London was already stepping toward a new century, where the light of steel would soon meet the shadow of war, and the hiss of steam would give way to the whisper of the modern world. The late 19th century. London was no longer just a city. It had become an idea, a symbol of strength, of intellect, of human ambition reaching the edge of its own limits. From the docks along the River Thames to the dome of St. Paul's, from the chime of Big Ben to the rumble of the underground trains beneath the earth, everything spoke of one story: the story of a metropolis that had gone beyond its physical borders to become the soul of an empire. The rhythm of London was no longer its own. It was the heartbeat of the world. When the sun rose over India, it was already setting in Canada. When the waves touched the shores of Australia, the news had already reached Fleet Street. Every road led here, not just to seek information, but to find the pulse of the entire world. Everything was gathered in London, the centre of commerce, of politics, of language, and of power. The city grew not only in land, but in influence. Every stone street, every grand building, every ringing bell declared the belief of an age that nothing was impossible. But its expansion was not only of territory, it was a thought. 19th century London stood as proof of both human ambition and pride. It held the faith that order could be built from stone, that light could be guided by steam, That time itself could be measured by metal and by sound, and through the misty boulevards, amid the steady rhythm of trains and wheels, there was something deeper that could be felt. The city had become alive, a living will of humanity in an age of reason and of industry. London was no longer only the capital of Britain. It had become the symbol of a modern world being born, a heart that beat for millions across the earth, a light in the fog, shining over the farthest lands of the empire. And from this moment, history marked an unforgettable chapter, a time when London expanded without end, not only in space, but within the very mind of humankind. The 20th century opened with the sound of machines, but also with the footsteps of marching armies. The British Empire still stretched across 5 continents. Yet at its very centre, in London, people began to feel something was changing. The air no longer smelled only of coal. It carried the faint scent of gunpowder. And then, as if echoing the rhythm of the century, war returned. When the First World War erupted in 1914, London heard the sound of air raid sirens for the first time. The streets that once echoed with the sounds of horses and carriages were now draped in darkness. The theatres closed. Streetlights dimmed early. Even the church bells went silent, afraid to call attention from the enemy above. From faraway battlefields at the Somme and Ypres, news of casualties flowed back to Fleet Street. Rain-soaked newspapers. Women in black coats wait at the docks, hoping for a familiar face to return. London kept breathing, but softly, as if aware that peace could vanish at any moment. When the thunder of the First World War finally faded, less than 2 decades later, another storm arrived. In 1939, World War II began. And this time, the war was no longer distant. It came to every home, every street, every roof in London. September 1940. The skies over the capital roared with German bombers. They called it the Blitz, 57 nights of relentless fire. Bombs fell on ports, train stations, churches, hospitals, and schools. Neighborhoods like East End disappeared within hours. More than 30,000 people were killed. 1.5 million were left homeless. Thousands of streets turned into rivers of flame. Each night the sirens wailed. People rushed underground into the subway tunnels. They slept on cold stone floors, listening to the echoes of bombs above. In those long nights, no one spoke of victory. They spoke only of tomorrow. Through the smoke and chaos, St. Paul's Cathedral still stood, its silver dome covered in ash, glowing faintly under the firelight, a candle that refused to die. A photograph of the dome rising through the smoke became the symbol of endurance. They said, as long as St. Paul stands, London has not fallen. And it was true. Even under a sky of ash, even when the city's heart was burning, London would not go dark. Each morning, when the sirens fell silent, people came out from the shelters. They swept the dust, reopened their small shops, boiled a pot of tea. Life went on, quietly, stubbornly, as if survival itself was an act of defiance. Night after night, year after year, until 1945 when the last bombs finally stopped. When the smoke cleared, London was changed forever. Thousands of hectares lay in ruins. Streets that once had names were now just rubble. But as always, in the silence after destruction, something began to stir. The city had learned its most incredible truth: that strength lives not in its walls, but in its people. After the war, London began to rebuild. However, this time it was not being rebuilt with stone alone. It was rebuilt with memory, with faith, with hope for a city that could finally breathe again. Many left the center, still scarred and broken, for the quiet of the suburbs. The air was clearer, the land was cheaper, and the nights no longer smelled of smoke. A wave of migration began. London spread outward over the northern and southern fields, where new homes and small towns began to grow. After the war, London no longer sought to expand its territory. It wanted to breathe. To stop the city from expanding endlessly, the government proposed a bold idea: the Green Belt, a ring of protected land surrounding London, where no building could rise, a circle of open air to help the city keep its breath. That simple idea shaped the London we know today, a city that learned to pause so it would not consume itself. The 1950s and 1960s became years of rebuilding. Concrete towers replaced the slums. New roads stretched wide. New bridges crossed the Thames. The underground pushed deeper into the earth. And once again, London rose from its own ashes. But this rebirth had a different color. No longer golden with the empire. No longer black with smoke. It was grey. The grey of concrete, of realism, of a city learning to live again. People no longer spoke of glory. They spoke of peace, of homes, of rebuilding street by street. London became a quiet symbol of endurance. Not loud, not proud, but deeply human. Seen from above in those years, London spread outward in slow breathing circles. From the heart of St. Paul's and Westminster to the calm of its outer suburbs. And around it all, the Green Belt stood like a soft boundary, keeping the city from choking on its own pulse. A city once reborn from the ashes of bombs was now learning to live slowly. And when night came, among the new homes, the sound of trains drifted softly across the river. People sat by their windows, watching chimney smoke curl into the air, listening to the wind move gently through the trees. And in that quiet, they knew they were living inside a new chapter of London. A city that had burned, that had fallen, that had coughed in its own smoke, now knew how to take a deep breath and begin again. A London no longer of empire, but of people. A London that could smile again at dawn after a century of smoke and ash. In the latter half of the 20th century, London underwent a significant transformation, once again altering its shape. The war had faded into the past. The scars on the walls were slowly covered by fresh paint. The sound of bombs was now only a memory. But among the rebuilt grey blocks of concrete, a new rhythm began to return. the rhythm of commerce, of money, of a world reaching beyond national borders. From the 1970s onward, as the global economy shifted, London quickly reclaimed the role it once held. No longer the center of an empire, it became the hub of international trade. Along the River Thames, great banks rose from the old city to docklands, once the derelict docks of war. The old port now shimmered with towers of glass, glowing softly in the morning mist, reflecting calm water as if it had never known fire or smoke. Canary Wharf became the new symbol of modern London. Steel and glass stood upright, cold, precise, and confident. Money flowed. Contracts moved. Flights connected London with New York, Tokyo, and Hong Kong. The heartbeat of the city no longer came only from Big Ben, but from the tapping of keyboards, the ringing of telephones, and the rush of footsteps on trading floors. Through every crisis and every recovery, London learned to adapt, flexible, steady, resilient, like the Thames flowing beneath its bridges. As the world entered the age of globalization, London was no longer just a British city. It became a living network for the entire world. People came from everywhere, from South Asia, from Africa, from Europe. On its streets, voices and scents mingled. Indian curry, Turkish bread, Italian coffee, French laughter. Each person brought a language, a memory, and a dream. And London, like a great mirror, reflected them all. A city once shaped by power was now shaped by people. Neighborhoods like Brixton, Camden, Notting Hill, and Shoreditch have become homes to many diverse cultures. Every home, every small cafe told a story, a journey across oceans and years to arrive and to stay. Today, London is home to nearly 9 million people, one of the most diverse cities on the planet. More than 300 languages are spoken each day. In the crowd, on the streets, you can hear them all. English blending into Nigerian tones, Spanish flowing into Urdu. This diversity has not erased London's identity. It has deepened it, like a long, unfinished symphony. Across the city's skyline, past and present share the same frame. Across the river, the white dome of St. Paul's still stands, its reflection touching the water like a whisper from the centuries. To the south, the Shard rises, slender and sharp, like the pen of a new age writing the story the old walls never finished. When the sun sets, gold from the glass towers mingles with the silver of the old dome. The city seems to breathe. A quiet breath of time, steady and alive. Walking through London today, you can feel two worlds coexisting, one made of stone and memory, the other of steel, glass, and light. They do not collide. They merge, like two heartbeats within a single body. London does not just live with time. It lives inside it. Each day is a new version of itself. Perhaps London reached its greatest height in the 19th century, when its empire encompassed the world. But with every generation, the city finds a new shape, not brighter, but deeper, not louder, but calmer. It does not seek to conquer. It listens. It does not blaze with glory. It glows with endurance. Perhaps the strangest thing about London is that, though it changes every day, it still feels familiar. Through every fog, through every rain-filled afternoon, people can still sense what never changes. The slow, steady breath of a city that knows how to rise, how to change, and how to be still. London, after all, is not only the capital of a nation, it is a collective soul, a place where people from everywhere find part of themselves, a city that never stops moving, yet never forgets to pause and remember, where Big Ben still rings through the centuries, where the lights still shimmer on the river like memories reflected in the present, where past and future pad side by side in a song without words. And perhaps that is why London endures, not through power, but through memory, not through victory, but through resilience. A city that has burned, that has fallen, that has knelt, but has never lost its heartbeat. A quiet London, steadfast and forever changing.